The blare of a Lagos horn, an angry guttural roar ripped through the humid dawn, not from the street below, but from a dilapidated speaker clutched to Mama Ngozi's ear. She didn't flinch. Her eyes, bloodshot and swollen, from a night spent wrestling with the prayer mat and a demon of despair, were fixed on the flickering candlelight. Outside, the city was just beginning to stir, a low hum that would soon crescendo into its usual chaotic symphony. Inside her cramped one-room apartment in Surulere, the air hung thick with the scent of stale incense and unfulfilled hope. Mama, they have taken in. The voice on the other end, and nephew Chike's was a frantic squeak, barely audible above the static. The police, they just bundled him into the van. No warrant, nothing. The candle flame wavered, mirroring the sudden tremor that ran through Ngozi's gaunt frame. Her heart, already a weary drum, hammered against her ribs. She knew with the chilling certainty of a premonition that had been gnawing at her for weeks who him was, her grandson, her precious, headstrong, brilliant Emeka. Where? She whispered, the single word a struggle against the lump forming in her throat. I don't know, Mama. They didn't say. They just drove off towards Adeniji Adele. Chike's voice dissolved into a choked sob. Adeniji Adele, the name hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. It was a precinct known for its iron fist, its dark, unforgiving cells, and a reputation for making problems, particularly those involving young, ambitious men from the wrong side of the tracks, disappear. Emeka, her bright star, who had, against all odds, secured a scholarship to the University of Ibadan, studying computer science. Her only hope for a future beyond the daily grind, the never ending struggle to keep her small tailoring business afloat. Mama Ngozi slowly lowered the ancient phone, her fingers numb. The candlelight, once a beacon, now seemed to mock her, casting long dancing shadows that mimicked the demon swelling in her mind. Just yesterday, Emeka had been bubbling with excitement, talking about his final year project, an app, he called it, that would connect small scale farmers directly to buyers, bypassing the exploitative middlemen. He had spent countless nights hunched over his worn laptop, his brow furrowed in concentration, his eyes alight with the vision of a better Nigeria. And now this. She pushed herself up from the threadbare mat, her joints protesting with a chorus of creaks. Her wrapper, once vibrant Ankara, was faded and worn, a testament to years of tireless labor. But her spirit, though bruised, was not yet broken. She had faced down hunger, sickness, and the casual cruelty of a city that devoured the weak. She would not let it devour her ground. The journey to Adeniji Adele was a blur of grinding traffic and impatient shouts. The early morning rush had begun, and downful buses, packed to bursting, weaved precariously through the narrow streets. The air was thick with the fumes of exhaust and the pungent aroma of street food. Mama Ngozi, usually acutely aware of her surroundings, felt nothing but a dull throb of dread. Her mind was a whirlwind of frantic questions. What had Emeka done? He was a good boy, a quiet boy, more comfortable with lines of code than with the rough and tumble of the streets. Had he been set up? Was this about his app, about stepping on someone's toes? When she finally disembarked from a battered Okada near the formidable gates of the Adeniji Adele police station, her legs felt like lead. The building, a squat, imposing structure, exuded an aura of cold, indifferent power. Uniformed officers, their faces unreadable, stood guard at the entrance, their weapons glinting in the rising sun. I am here for Emeka Okoro, she announced, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the tremor in her hands. The officer, a burly man with a perpetual sneer, barely glanced at her. Name, he grunted, not even bothering to look up from the tattered newspaper he was reading. Emeka Okoro, desperate. They took him this morning, she repeated, her voice gaining a desperate edge. Many Emeka O's here, Mama. Which one? He scoffed, his eyes still glued to the paper. A wave of impotent rage washed over Mama Ngozi. This was the system, the apathy, the deliberate obfuscation, designed to wear down the poor, to make them give up. But she wouldn't. Not for Emeka. He is a student at Ibadan, computer science. His father, my son, was a police officer, God rest his soul. She blurted out, a desperate, illogical plea. Her son Femi had died years ago in a botched raid, a forgotten hero in a forgotten incident. She rarely spoke of him, the pain still too raw. But now, in her desperation, she clutched at any straw. The officer finally looked up, a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, in his eyes. Femi Okoro, the one from Area C. Mama Ngozi nodded, tears pricking her eyes. Yes, that was my son. Emeka is his son. The officer grunted again. Then, after a moment of consideration, gestured vaguely towards a small, grimy office to the side. Go inside. Ask for Sergeant Adebayo. Tell him Mama Femi sent you. A glimmer of hope, fragile and fleeting, ignited within her. Sergeant Adebayo. She remembered him, a junior officer under her son, a quiet, diligent man who had always shown Femi respect. Could he be her unlikely ally in this desolate place?
The office was stifling, smelling of stale sweat and old paper. Sergeant Adebayo, a man with tired eyes and a salt and pepper mustache, looked up from a stack of files. Recognition, a flicker of it, crossed his face when she mentioned Femi. Mama, Femi, he said, his voice softer than the other officers, but still wary. What brings you here? Mama Ngozi poured out her story, her words tumbling out in a torrent of anguish and frustration. She spoke of Emeka's brilliance, his dreams, the injustice of his arbitrary arrest. Sergeant Adebayo listened, his expression a mixture of sympathy and caution. Mama, he began, when she had finished. I remember Femi, a good man. But this is a different matter. Your grandson was picked up as part of a sweep. Cyber fraud, they're calling it. A big operation. Cyber fraud. Mama. Ngozi gasped, the words a bitter taste in her mouth. Emeka, never. He builds things. He solves problems. He is not a fraudster. Adebayo sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Mama, it's not always clear-cut. Sometimes, these young men, they get involved with the wrong crowd, or their talents are exploited. He paused, then leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. There's a new DPO, a very ambitious man. He's cracking down, making examples. But Emeka is innocent, she insisted, her voice rising. You must believe me. He was working on an app for farmers. Adebayo's eyes flickered. An app, you say? What kind of app? Mama Ngozi described it, the passion in her voice overriding her fear. She painted a picture of Emeka, hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen, his mind buzzing with lines of code, a vision of helping his people. Adebayo listened intently, a thoughtful expression on his face. He murmured. That's interesting. Look, Mama, I can't promise anything. This DPO, he's not easy to reason with, but I can try to find his file, see if I can get him to talk to you. It might take time. Time. The word hung heavy, in the air. In a place like Adnagi Adel, time was a luxury Emeka might not have. Mama Ngozi knew that the longer he was held, the deeper he would sink into the bureaucratic quicksand, the more likely he would be coerced, manipulated, or simply forgotten. She spent the rest of the day in a state of agonizing limbo. She sat on a worn wooden bench outside Adebayo's office, watching the parade of human misery that passed through the station. Families desperate for news of their loved ones, lawyers with briefcases full of promises and empty gestures, officers moving with an air of detached authority. She prayed, she pleaded, she cajoled. She tried to catch Adebayo's eye whenever he passed, a silent plea for an update. Finally, as dusk began to settle, painting the Lagos sky in hues of orange and purple, Adebayo emerged, his face grim. Mama, he said, his voice weary. I found his file. He's being held on suspicion of operating a phishing scam. They found some code on his laptop, they say, that links him to it. Mama Ngozi felt a cold dread grip her. Phishing scam. That's a lie. His code is for good. He told me. I believe you, Mama, Adebayo said, his gaze meeting hers with genuine sympathy. But the DPO, he's convinced. He's looking for a big win, a high-profile case, and Emeka, with his computer skills, he fits the profile they're looking for. So what do we do? She asked, her voice a desperate whisper. Adebayo hesitated, then lowered his voice even further. There's a lawyer, Barrister Oho. He handles these kinds of cases. He's expensive, but he's good, and he knows how to navigate this system. He scribbled a number on a piece of paper and pressed it into her hand. And Mama, try to find his laptop. If you can prove what he was working on, if you can show his real code, it might help. The thought of finding Emeka's laptop sent a fresh wave of panic through her. She had no idea where it was. He usually kept it with him, even when visiting friends. Had the police taken it, or had he hidden it? The night was long and desolate. Mama Ngozi returned to her tiny apartment, the city's roar a muffled drone. Against her throbbing headache, she clutched the scrap of paper with Barrister Oho's number like a lifeline. She knew she couldn't afford him. Her meager savings, carefully hoarded for years, wouldn't even cover a fraction of his fees. But then, a memory, sharp and clear, pierced through her despair. Emeka, a few weeks ago, complaining about a bug in his code, showing her a hidden compartment he had built into the bottom of his old battered desk in their tiny living area. Just in case. Mama, he had joked, you'll never know when you'll need a secret hidey hole for your brilliant ideas. With a renewed surge of energy, she practically lunged at the desk. Her fingers fumbled with the worn wood, searching for the release. With a faint click, a section of the false bottom gave way, revealing a small, dark recess. Her heart leaped. Inside, nestled among some old notebooks and a forgotten tin of biscuits, was Emeka's laptop. She pulled it out, cradling it like a precious jewel. It was warm to the touch, as if still humming with his creative energy. She pressed the power button, her fingers trembling. The screen flickered to life, displaying his familiar desktop. And there, prominently displayed, was the icon for his AgriConnect app. A desperate plan began to form in her mind. It was a long shot, a crazy gamble, but she had nothing left to lose. She couldn't afford a lawyer, but she had something more valuable, the truth, encoded in lines of digital brilliance. The next morning, Mama Ngozi, fueled by a potent blend of fear and resolve, returned to Adnagia Dell. This time, she wasn't just a desperate grandmother, she was a woman with a mission. She carried Emeka's laptop, wrapped carefully in a clean, if faded, Ankara cloth. She bypassed the dismissive officer at the gate and went straight to Adebayo's office. He looked up, surprised to see her, and even more surprised when she unwrapped the laptop. "Sergeant," she said, her voice firm, "this is Emeka's laptop. This is his app. This is the proof. He is innocent." Adebayo's eyes widened as he saw the laptop. He knew the DPO had been looking for it, claiming it was critical evidence of Emeka's guilt. "Mama, where did you get this?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "They were looking for this. It might complicate things. It proves his innocence," she countered. "Let the DPO see it. Let him see what Emeka was truly working on." Adebayo hesitated, then a grim determination settled on his face. He knew the risks. Going against the DPO was career suicide, perhaps worse. But something in Mama Ngozi's unwavering conviction, in the desperate hope shining in her tired eyes, moved him. And the memory of his former boss, Femi Okoro, a good man brought down by a corrupt system, spurred him on. "All right, Mama," he said, taking a deep breath, "but you have to be ready. The DPO, he's a formidable man." The meeting with DPO Bello was a tense affair. His office was plush, a stark contrast to the grimy surroundings of the rest of the station. He was a corpulent man with a booming voice, and eyes that missed nothing. He listened, his face impassive, as Adebayo, with Mama Ngozi standing rigidly beside him, explained the discovery of the laptop and Emeka's true work. When Adebayo finished, DPO Bello leaned back in his chair, a small, unsettling smile playing on his lips. "So, Sergeant, you are suggesting that our expert forensics team missed this? That this young man, a suspected cybercriminal, was actually building an app for farmers?" He chuckled, a harsh, dismissive sound. "Sir, the code on this laptop, it's clear. It's an agricultural platform, not a phishing script," Adebayo insisted, his voice gaining confidence. Mama Ngozi stepped forward, clutching the laptop to her chest. My grandson is a good boy, sir. He dreams of helping his people. He is not a fraudster. Please, just look at it. DPO Bello's eyes narrowed. He looked from Mama Njosi's defiant gaze to the battered laptop, then back to Adebayo, a flicker of something, perhaps annoyance, in his eyes. He had a reputation to uphold, a narrative of a successful crackdown on cybercrime to maintain. This old woman, with her humble demeanor and her defiant laptop, was threatening to unravel it all. Sergeant Bello said, his voice deceptively soft. You know the procedure. This laptop should have been submitted as evidence. This is highly irregular. Sir, with all due respect, if this laptop proves his innocence, then it is vital evidence. Adebayo countered, his voice steady. A long, tense silence filled the room. DPO Bello stared at Mama Njosi, then at the laptop. The prospect of admitting a mistake, of having to retract a public statement about a major arrest, was galling. But the old woman's unyielding gaze, the quiet defiance in her posture, chipped away at his composure, and Adebayo's calm, almost insolent, insistence was equally unnerving. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, DPO Bello gestured towards the laptop. All right, Sergeant, connect it to the display. Let's see this agricultural platform that is so vital. Adebayo quickly connected the laptop to the large monitor on Bello's desk. The AgriConnect logo bloomed on the screen, vibrant and hopeful. Adebayo, with Emeka's usual speed and familiarity, navigated through the app's interface, demonstrating its features: real-time market prices, direct messaging between farmers and buyers, secure payment integration. As the demonstration progressed, a grudging curiosity, and perhaps even a hint of respect, began to replace the DPO's dismissive sneer. He saw the intricate design, the clean code, the genuine utility of the application. This wasn't the work of a crude cybercriminal. This was the work of a skilled developer, a visionary. When Adebayo finished, a heavy silence descended. DPO Bello leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his chin propped on his hands. He looked at the screen, then at Mama Njosi. So, he finally said, his voice surprisingly quiet. This is what he was building. Yes, sir, Mama Njosi said, her voice barely a whisper, yet infused with a lifetime of unwavering faith. He just wants to help his people, to make things better. DPO Bello sat back, a contemplative look on his face. He had a choice. He could stick to his initial narrative, dismiss the evidence, and let Emeka languish in a cell, effectively crushing a young man's potential. Or he could admit, albeit implicitly, that he had been mistaken, and perhaps, in doing so, do something truly just. The latter would be an admission of a flaw, something a man like him rarely entertained. But the sheer audacity of this old woman, the undeniable evidence on the screen, and Adebayo's quiet, steadfast support, had cracked his formidable shell. He picked up his phone. Bring Emeka Okoro to my office, he barked into the receiver. Mama Ngosi's heart leaped. Hope, pure and exhilarating, surged through her veins. Minutes later, Emeka walked in, his clothes rumpled, his eyes tired, but still holding that spark of youthful determination. When his gaze fell upon his grandmother, then on his laptop, a wave of relief washed over his face. Mama, he exclaimed, rushing to her side. DPO Bello cleared his throat. Emeka Okoro, he boomed. Your grandmother has presented compelling evidence regarding your activities. He paused. Then, with a subtle shift in his tone, a rare hint of grudging respect, he continued, while we will still investigate the initial allegations, and you will be released on bail for now, it appears, you may have been misidentified. Mama Njosi looked at her grandson, a silent prayer of thanks forming on her lips. Emeka, her brilliant, stubborn Emeka, was free. For now, the battle wasn't over. The city, with its unforgiving currents and its pervasive corruption, would always be a challenging sea to navigate. But for today, justice, however reluctantly, had flickered in the harsh light of Adnigi Adel as they walked out of the station. The Lagos sun, now high in the sky, seemed to shine a little brighter. The city's noise, once a symphony of despair, now sounded like a triumphant roar. Mama Njosi held Emeka's hand, her grip firm, a silent promise that no matter what storms raged, she would be there, a steadfast anchor in the chaotic heart of Lagos. And Emeka, looking at the familiar cityscape, knew that he had been given a second chance, a chance to build not just an app, but a better future for himself, for his grandmother, and perhaps for his country.